D.C. WPBF 25 News, South Florida's trusted political leader. Leadership Florida, the Florida Press Association, Broward College, the Florida League of Cities, AARP, the Claude Pepper Center and Foundation. This is Decision 2018 Before You Vote, the Florida gubernatorial debate. Now, here's your moderator, WPBF 25 News anchor, Todd McDermott.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this all-important final debate in the race for Florida governor. I want to welcome our statewide audience on television and on Florida Public Radio, and our audience here in Bailey Hall at Broward College in Davie, Florida, because tonight we're going to seek answers to the issues that matter most to you. I also want to give a heartfelt thanks to our candidates for governor, Ron DeSantis and Andrew Gillum. Thank you both so much for being here, for joining us for this debate. Also with me to join in the questioning of the candidates tonight, I want you to meet our panelists. Isadora Rangel, columnist and engagement editor for Florida Today, part of the USA Today network, and Anthony Mann, political reporter for South Florida's Sun Sentinel. Now, to the rules for tonight's debate, and they are simple. Each candidate has 60 seconds to answer a question. Rebuttals and answers to follow-up questions are 30 seconds, and they are at my discretion as debate moderator. Now, both candidates agreed to forego opening statements because we want to allow for as much time as possible to get to those issues and those possible questions on the issues. Mr. DeSantis, based on drawing of numbers beforehand, the first question goes to you. Today, pipe bombs were sent addressed to the homes of Michelle and Barack Obama, Bill and Hillary Clinton, as well as former CIA Director John Brennan at CNN, Congressional Representative Maxine Waters, her offices, and the offices of Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz here in Florida, to her offices as well, and I know that Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz is here tonight. Mr. DeSantis, just yesterday, your campaign had issued that statement condemning another robocall, a racist robocall, targeting your opponent. Have we reached a point where divisive political rhetoric, where members of one political party even call the opposite party evil, have crossed the line to push some people over the edge?
Well, it's great to be here. I am Ron DeSantis. I'm an Iraq veteran, former prosecutor, and I am on a mission to protect Florida's future. I was at the congressional baseball practice when a gunman tried to shoot, my teammates did shoot Steve Scalise because he didn't like Republicans. And I condemn that. I condemn what happened today. Obviously, we need to get the facts before we jump to conclusions. But I think it is important that we try to unify. And so my agenda has been, I think, something that the vast majority of Floridians can get behind. Number one, I want to keep our economic momentum going. I don't want to raise taxes like Andrew wants to do. I want to keep it going and build off the success we've had. I also want to protect the environment that Floridians enjoy. We all want to have clean water. We all know that that is the lifeblood of our state. And if we don't get that right, then Florida's future is in jeopardy. I want to protect education opportunities, including more vocational and technical training in our classrooms, because those are the jobs of the 21st century. And I also want to protect our communities, because you can have a good economy, good environment. If you don't have safe communities, then a lot of that doesn't matter. So I will stand with law enforcement and make sure that we protect Florida's future.
Direct the same question. Thank you, Mr. DeSantis. I want to direct the same question to you, Mr. Gillum. That is the divisive political rhetoric pushing some of us over the line and over the edge.
Well, I think the answer is absolutely it is. We saw not only around the country, but right here in our own state, Democratic elected officials who were targeted. Thankfully, nobody was hurt in today's incidences. But we've really seen a collapsing of our political discourse. My opponent, as soon as he won the Republican nomination for governor, went on Fox News and said to voters here in the state of Florida not to monkey the state up by electing me. It was followed up that same week by neo-Nazis making calls into the state of Florida to attack my character, jungle music in the background, and the calls of monkeys being heard. We've seen neo-Nazis empowered. We saw what happened in Charlottesville, the moral equivocation that this president has demonstrated. My opponent, endorsed by him, has run this race very, very close to the Trump handbook, where we call each other names, where we run false advertisements, and in this case, every single one of his advertisements that mentions my name has been declared false by PolitiFact.
Mr. Gillum, your time is up, and Mr. DeSantis, I'm going to allow you 30 seconds.
Well, Andrew Gillum signed a pledge with a radical group, the Green Dream Defenders, to sign up for a radical manifesto that attacked our police officers, that said they have no place in justice, that said they should be defunded. He signed a manifesto that said the U.S. was the biggest bully in the history of the planet and that we should take money out of our military. This same group that he stands with and stands by attacks the state of Israel for boycott, divest, and sanction. They say Israel's a genocidal apartheid state. So you want to talk about division? It doesn't get more divisive than the Dream Defenders. And to this day, Andrew Gillum has not condemned the Dream Defenders.
I'm going to give you a chance to talk about that pledge you signed.
I think it's only appropriate. Mr. DeSantis in the last debate lied 21 times. 21. And now today makes the 22nd, and we just started this debate. So the pledge that I signed was to reject accepting political contributions from the private prisons, the same private prison industry that has given him hundreds of thousands of dollars to do their bidding. He's owned by them. I reject that, and in my community, we work hand in glove with law enforcement to make us a city that is experiencing a 5-year low in our crime rate.
That's your 30 seconds, and I have to give you another chance, Mr. DeSantis.
So then why did the pledge you signed, the Freedom Pledge, say, I support the Freedom Papers? That's the manifesto that's been documented in the press. That is 100% true. And yet again, Andrew, who's a career politician, has never done anything outside of politics, will not accept responsibility for his conduct. He wouldn't accept responsibility for getting a $1,000 ticket from an undercover FBI agent at last debate. We now know that he lied about that. At some point, you got to demonstrate leadership and accept responsibility for what you've done.
Mr. DeSantis, thank you. Again, I had asked our audience, if you would, to please not applaud, because we want to have these two gentlemen get all their time in to discuss these issues. And the question now is to you, Mr. Gillum. Your opponent says you were, quote, embroiled in a lot of corruption scandals and can't be entrusted with running the state. He says you are corrupt. You were befriended, as he just mentioned, by undercover FBI agents looking for corruption in your city. You socialized with them in New York City. You say the FBI told you you are not the target of their investigation. Now, this week, we know the subpoenaed text messages from a lobbyist who was your longtime friend appear to show a high-priced ticket to see the Broadway show Hamilton came from the undercover agent and not from your brother, as you stated. The question is for you, did you know when you took that ticket from your brother in the lobby of the Richard Rodgers Theater on 46th there in Manhattan, that an undercover agent posing as a developer had paid for the ticket and was gifting it to you?
Yeah, I know this has been a great theme of news today, and so I want to set it straight, especially for the benefit of my opponent. One, I did go and see Hamilton. I was aware that Adam Corey and Mike Miller arranged so that we could go and see the show. I arrived at the theater and received my ticket from my brother. The problem that I have is that I should have asked more questions to make sure that everything that had transpired was above board. I was informed by my brother at the time that he gave Adam Corey tickets to a Jay-Z, Beyonce concert, of which I understand they took later, and I understood that to have solved whatever the issue was with regards to the expenses associated with it. But I take responsibility for not having asked more questions. But let me tell you, I'm running for governor. In the state of Florida, we got a lot of issues. In fact, we got 99 issues, and Hamilton ain't one of them. I get that this is what my opponent wants to discuss, but I would ask him, what happened to the $145,000 in receipts of public taxpayer money that he has yet to reveal?
Your time is up, Mr. Gillum. Mr. DeSantis, I'm going to let you talk in just a second, but I have a follow-up for you, and that is, how will you assure Florida voters tonight, in light of these stories, these scandals, that you didn't violate ethics rules and that you won't be indicted somehow and throw the state into turmoil if you were to become governor?
Well, let me be very, very clear about this, which is I am not the subject of an FBI investigation. Neither is my city. There is absolutely no proof to substantiate that. Now, my opponent is going out of his way to attempt to make that the case, but I have zero tolerance for corruption. I've completely cooperated at every step of the way. Compare that to how Mr. DeSantis deals with the FBI. He's undermined them at every turn, sponsored a piece of legislation to curb their investigation into this administration in Washington, and even went so far as to suggest a deep state is at work to undermine this presidency.
Mr. Gillum, thank you. I want to give Mr. DeSantis his time now.
Well, when I worked with the FBI, I was doing it as a prosecutor to bring people to justice. When Andrew is dealing with the FBI, he's dealing with an undercover agent as a person of interest in investigation. Now, think about what he wants you to believe. He wants you to believe that he's not under investigation. Why would an undercover FBI agent posing as a contractor give him a $1,000 ticket to Hamilton? And so he was asked the question by me, did you pay for it? He was indignant. He says, I'm a grown man. I pay for my stuff. He lied the other day. The text messages show he knew it came from Mike Miller, who he didn't know was an undercover FBI agent at the time, but now we know that. He also didn't tell the truth about the junket he took in Costa Rica. Well, here, let me just finish this one thought.
It's 30 seconds.
Because this is why it's important.
To make sure that
this is why it's important. Because the lobbyist who funded that, he gave a $2 million contract to build a restaurant.
I will advise you, Mr. DeSantis and Mr. Gillum, if you talk over me when I'm trying to stop you, nobody can hear you. Unfortunately, if you talk over me, we're all loud. Okay. But if you talk over me, nobody at home, no one in this audience will hear you. And Mr. DeSantis, this next question is for you. That is, you say because the FBI probe, which you just mentioned, and the quote, the scandals, that Andrew Gillum can't be entrusted with running this state. How does that statement square up with your support of the president? We have an ongoing FBI Russia probe hanging over the White House. We have corruption scandals that forced out 2 cabinet members because of misuse of taxpayer money. We have the guilty pleas to federal crimes by the president's national security advisor and top Trump campaign officials. I ask you, how does one square with the other?
Well, let me finish my thought about what was going on here. So he got the junket that he didn't pay for in Costa Rica, about $1,000. They had business before the city, these lobbyists, and guess what? Andrew was getting things he shouldn't have gotten, and then they got a $2 million contract from the city of Tallahassee. That is what corruption is. When you get something you shouldn't have had, and then you give something to people who are trying to influence you. So that is wrong, and he has not told the truth about any of that. What I would like Andrew to do is commit to waive, he's now under ethics investigation by the Florida Ethics Commission. Waive all confidentiality. Get all the statements and evidence out there so the voters of Florida can know whether it's on the up and up. So if you'll commit to do that, then I think we can maybe put this all to bed. That is what we need to do. Now, in terms of the administration, I was conducting oversight over people who were bad apples. Peter Strzok saying we're going to use an investigation to alter an election. I work with FBI agents as a prosecutor. Not one of them would have done that. They are not political. They are good civil servants. He abused his power, and I was glad to try to bring him to justice.
All right, Mr. DeSantis, thank you. I'm going to give 30 seconds to Mr. Gillum now.
Is it possible to get a minute? You were supposed to dock him of his time when he continued to use his privilege to speak over you.
How about I cut the difference and make it 45 seconds?
Okay, I'll work within that. So let's first try to deconstruct a lot of the lies that, again, came from my opponent. Number one, I'm just going to back up because this is a race for governor. We had bombs delivered to homes of national leaders today. The issues that are confronting the people of this state, health care, accessibility, affordable housing, paying teachers what they're worth, are all being sucked up by the first however many minutes of this debate by lies by this gentleman, who, by the way, told the press that he would not release $145,000 of public money, our money, and where he traveled. We know he used some of that money to go to Fox News to run his campaign for governor, yet he has refused to release those receipts. Why don't you begin setting an example and releasing your receipts, because I've released all of mine.
Let's go ahead and move on, gentlemen. I know that, but I know you want to talk about these other issues, and we are way over on this one. Let's talk about health care. I know you both want to talk about health care. This question is to Andrew Gillum. You promised to fight for Medicaid expansion. You said on Sunday, 800,000 people, you could get this coverage for them. Florida's Republican legislators are going to fight back against that. The State House rejected the idea last time. The governor eventually did too. If you're governor, What can you really deliver to the people of Florida when you say, I want to expand Medicaid to these people?
Absolutely. So we should begin by saying that the Senate, under Republican control actually passed Medicaid expansion by a vote of 39-1 under Republican leadership. We deserve to expand Medicaid and offer access to health care for over 800,000 of the most medically needy people in our state. And if we do that, we will pull down $6 billion from the federal government that will go into this state's healthcare system so we can hire more doctors, more nurses, more nurse practitioners, more healthcare workers. This means something to me. I remember having to wait for the free dental clinic to come through my neighborhood in order to have my teeth cleaned. I would expect that the elected representatives in the House and in the Senate would do the work of the people of this state. Suspend with the philosophical differences and go and act on their behalf. My opponent in Congress voted over a dozen times to repeal the Affordable Care Act. He told a cancer patient, when concerned about how they were supposed to get access to health care, to go to the emergency room. My opponent also said that he would allow insurance companies to discriminate based off of pre-existing conditions.
Mr. Gillum, thank you. Mr. DeSantis, the U.S. Census reports that last year, just under 13%, more than 1 in 10 Floridians don't have health insurance right now. About 2.5 million people in the state. Only 4 states are doing worse right now. You did vote for the American Health Care Act. That was the replacement for Obamacare. Now, pre-existing conditions is mentioned in that legislation. However, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office analyzed it, looked at the plan, and found that that plan would end up costing people with pre-existing conditions their coverage, and that they wouldn't be able to afford the coverage because the premiums would rush too high. That's the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. I know you want to defend that vote.
Well, it's not true. So people
What's not true, sir? The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office?
They've been wrong about a lot of things. So here's what we did. We wanted to bring premiums and deductibles down. I had so many folks come to me and their deductibles skyrocketed, their premiums were skyrocketed. Some people paying more for premiums than for rent. And so people couldn't afford it. Some people lost access. So the bill mandated pre-existing conditions, and there were people who dropped coverage and decided not to do it, not people through no fault of their own, but there were subsidies that would have paid that off. There would have been risk subsidies that would, so they would not have borne the cost. And so that was a way, I thought, to have more access to people, lower premiums, because if you lower the premiums, more people can afford it, and you'll get more people doing it.
So
and here's the promise that I make to voters here in Florida. If for some reason something changes on that individual market protections, the court does something, I will happily sign a bill to help folks with pre-existing conditions here in the state of Florida.
And Mr. DeSantis, I want to give you the chance, just as we go back to the Congressional Budget Office analysis, that they also said that that $8 billion that was put in to H.R. 1628 would have done something. It was supposed to pay for pre-existing conditions. It was $1.6 billion a year for 5 years, and the CBO said that it would not cover their costs, and they would still lose their pre-existing coverage.
Way more money than that. There was over $115 billion in the bill, and states have done this effectively, like Maine, who had Obamacare-style architecture prior to that on a state level. They used this tool, and they were able to directly subsidize the people who were effectively uninsurable. That brought rates down for everybody else, but allowed access. So there was way over $100 billion, so I'm not sure where you're getting that, but at the end of the day, we know obviously everyone on Medicare, employer insurance, all that, they've been covered on pre-existing conditions for decades. We all support that.
All right, sir,
there was a problem on the individual market, and we should deal with it.
I should also let you know, again, my facts come from the Congressional Budget Office. Mr. Gillum, I want to give you a chance to reply.
Well, I mean, it's very simple. Mr. DeSantis can have a monopoly on his opinion. He doesn't have a monopoly on facts. Facts matter. And his record matters. He voted repeatedly to take away health care. He voted repeatedly to allow insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing coverage. If you are a cancer patient, a patient with diabetes, sickle cell, if you are a pregnant woman in the state of Florida, Mr. DeSantis will have allowed for your health care to be taken from you. That is a fact. He can't run away from it just because he wants to be governor of the state of Florida. He has to level with the people about what his congressional record was.
I have to give Mr. DeSantis another 30 seconds, then we're going to move on.
Anybody with pre-existing conditions, if that falls through the cracks in Florida, we'll stand by you. The bottom line is we have to make it more affordable for people. That's what my health care plan on rondesantis.com. You can go check it out. We're focusing on affordability like a laser. We're also focused on protecting people's existing coverage. Andrew supports a single-payer plan which will force people off Medicare, force people off their employer plans, dump them on a government-run single-payer plan. That is wrong. You should be able to keep the coverage that you've earned, whether it's Medicare, Medicare Advantage, whether it's what you're getting through your through your business.
Mr.
And to
DeSantis,
say that you're going to take people off that is dead wrong.
We're going to move on now. Gentlemen, thank you. I expected that to go the way it went. It was long, but I thank you both. We're going to go now to our panelist, Anthony Mann.
Mr. Gillum, you support a $15 minimum wage in Florida, and you support raising the state's corporate tax rate from 5.5 to about 8%. And you say that that money would generate $1 billion to increase education funding. But won't those two moves stunt job creation, possibly cause layoffs because of rising payroll costs, and keep some companies from moving to Florida, and maybe even cause some businesses to leave the state?
No, and I mean, we've seen this in other places. So number one, let's get to the tax and the revenue proposal. We're talking about, my opponent has talked a lot about the fact that I want to propose an income tax. I am against a state income tax. I've never proposed a state income tax. 97% of businesses in the state of Florida don't pay any corporate tax rate at all. 97%. And guess what? I'm not proposing to change that either. I'm talking about the 3% of the wealthiest corporations in this state. 3%. They received under the tax realignment, which was supported by the congressman, $6.3 billion from the federal government, tax money, our money. All we're simply saying is that they can keep $5.3 billion, but we deserve $1 billion of that to come into this state, pay teachers a wage they can live on, offer access to high-quality early learning to our children, and third, reinvest in apprenticeships, woodwork, shop, mechanical, electrical, technical, all of the degree training program that they could use to get a job, monetize that job, and go to work and earn a wage.
Thank you, Mr. Gillum.
Of course.
Another question on the economy. Isadora Rangel has a question for Mr. DeSantis.
Thank you, Todd. Mr. DeSantis, you're campaigning on protecting the economic momentum of Florida. A United Way study last year shows that just under 30% of Florida families can be considered the working poor. They work full-time but can't make ends meet. How are you going to help them get bigger paychecks so they can provide for their families?
Well, what Andrew's proposing, these massive tax increases, those are some of the very people that will be hurt the most. I started off making $6 an hour. It was a job that I needed to get through school. I did multiple jobs. Under Andrew's plan, I would not have had a job. I would have made $0 an hour. Businesses will leave the state. People will lose jobs, and will stop people from investing in Florida. It would be a historic mistake. What I'm going to do is I'm going to welcome more investment in Florida. And when I'm elected, people will know Florida's going to continue to have a low tax climate. We're going to be open for business. And here's what Andrew's not telling you. He has a history of raising taxes. Property tax increase as mayor, very stiff increase. Property tax increase as a commissioner in Tallahassee, even though he voted to give himself tens of thousands of dollars in additional retirement benefits. And now he's proposing a 40% tax increase, which is going to devastate folks. But the JMI study, nonpartisan, said if you add up all of Andrew's spending proposals, the only way you could possibly pay for it is either do a 38% statewide sales tax or to, yes, impose a state income tax. Now, he ain't going to tell you he's going to do that, but he has a history of raising taxes, and he's got proposals he can't afford.
I feel like, because you talked about Mr. Gillum's plan, before we get to the next question, I'll give you 30 seconds to talk about your plan.
Can I get 45? I mean, the congressman has
I don't want to negotiate anymore.
He has no fidelity toward the rules or the time in this room, and he continues to speak over you, but I'll try and do what I can with the moments that I have. So this is the same congressman who told us that by passing this huge tax realignment, taking money from all of the working people in this country and concentrating it with the top 1% and the wealthiest corporations, that money was going to magically trickle down, and that working people were going to get a raise. And what did we learn this week? They have drilled a deep hole into the national debt and working people haven't seen any appreciable rise in their wages. Let me be sure about this. When working people get a raise, they spend it. They pay their rent and they pay their mortgage, and maybe they save up enough to take a vacation, and that shouldn't be enough. That shouldn't be too much in the state of Florida in 2018.
And that is your time, sir. Thank you, Mr. DeSantis. I'll give you another 30 if you want it.
Oh, look, Andrew is complaining about the economy. We're in a situation now, our unemployment rate's like 3.7%. We're on a roll. Now, I don't think we've reached our potential. I think if we do it right, we can expand Florida's economic base. We can have strong technology sector, strong manufacturing, strong finance, and we can get to the point like Texas did where there's a national recession. Florida is effectively recession-proof because we're attracting so much investment, but you got to have a low-tax climate. We cannot allow Andrew Gillum to take away Florida's character as a low-tax state.
I need 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
This is the last 30 seconds.
That's fine. That's totally fine, and I appreciate your generosity on time. 44% of the people in the state of Florida say that they cannot make ends meet at the end of the month. So Mr. DeSantis' big donors may be doing just fine. They got their yachts and their boats, but for the rest of the working people in this state, they simply want a wage they can live on. And having grown up to my mother, who was a school bus driver, and my father, who was a construction worker, and watching my parents trade between which bills they could pay before something got cut off, it is enough of giving away to the wealthiest 1% and the rest of the people struggling all the way through. Unacceptable.
All right, thank you both. Let's move on. Mr. Gillum, this question's for you. You've said we've got to end this for-profit education system in reference to charter schools in the state. 10% of the students in Florida attend charter schools that provide an alternative to traditional public education. Are you saying you would cut any dollars away from what funds charter schools in this state?
No, I'm not proposing any change to the current status quo, but what we are saying is that we're going to put money into our public system where over 90% of our kids are still being educated, and it's going to begin by paying teachers a wage that they can live on. Right now, in the state of Florida, teachers make an average salary that is the 45th lowest of all 50 states. Now, if my grandmother were here, she wouldn't just say that's a shame. She would say it's a crying shame. We deserve to pay our teachers a wage they can live on. Miami-Dade, just a few miles from here, the school board is debating whether or not they're going to have to change the zoning for property that's on school grounds to create affordable housing because teachers can't afford to live in the neighborhoods that they work. I wouldn't be here today were it not for Miss Aubrey, Miss Lou LaFontaine, Mr. Estes, those teachers who poured into me, created an opportunity for me to push past my limits to become the first of my siblings to graduate from high school and to graduate from college. They deserve a wage that they can live on, and when I'm governor, we're going to fight for it.
All right, folks, I'm going to kindly ask the audience again. I want to hear everything these gentlemen have to say, so if you would hold your applause, it would be great. Mr. DeSantis, we're talking education. We're also talking charter schools, which I know are important to you as well. Where do you stand?
Well, Andrew's singing a different tune because in the Democratic primary, he said charter schools would be done. And here's my thing. They're public schools. They're not district-managed schools, and so they have the ability to innovate and be a little more nimble. And these are parents who are making the decision to send their kids to these schools, and some of them are succeeding. I mean, you know, the Renaissance Middle School here locally is one of the best-performing schools. You look at the performance has been positive. You have minority achievement gap is narrowing in some of these schools. So all I want is results. I think public education is very important. I'm a product of Florida public schools, but I don't think public education is synonymous with the legacy bureaucracies. I think parents, teachers, and students are the heart of it, not the bureaucrats. That's who I want to empower, and I'm on a mission to get vocational and technical training back into our schools, particularly in the high schools. We can partner with local industries and give them good opportunities for jobs.
Sorry, you're out of time. Thank you very much, sir, for letting me jump in there. I want to give 30 seconds back to you, Mr. Gillum.
Yeah, well, let me say first off, the congressman has accepted tens of thousands of dollars from Betsy DeVos, actually $200,000. Their agenda is simple. It is completely to defund the public education system and to stand up the for-profit charter school industry. For-profit. My opposition was to for-profit schools in this state. This is what we ought to do. We ought to unleash the talent of teachers to teach and unleash, in my opinion, the unmitigated talent of our students to learn. Why should we forsake 90% of the kids
Mr. Gillum,
to focus only on 10%? It's not right. That's not what Florida deserves.
I want to give 30 seconds back to Mr. DeSantis now.
So anyone in anything for profit you would get rid of. That means you're going to upend the lives of 240,000 students in the state of Florida. And again, these are students whose parents are making this decision, who are performing well. And here's the thing. I want accountability for all of our schools, including public charter schools. And when I'm governor, I'm going to push for a new requirement that if you're going to start a charter school, you need to buy insurance for the whole first year cost. Because if it's not working, I don't want the taxpayers on the hook for that. I want what works. But what Andrew is saying is really going to disrupt a lot of families who finally have a school that is right for them.
And that is time. Mr. DeSantis, thank you. Mr. Gillum, thank you. It's time to take a breath, perhaps take a drink of water. We're going to take a 2-minute break, and we'll return with Decision 2018. Before you vote, the debate for Florida governor when we come back.
We are Leadership Florida, a statewide community of leaders working for a better Florida.